Welcome back to Keeping Hope Alive. I'm Jo Comerford, and you're going to hear from Kirsten Levitt at Stone Soup.
Sure. My name is Kirsten Levitt. I am the executive director and executive chef at the Stone Soup Café here in Greenfield, Massachusetts. There's so much that drives me to be in service of our community. When I was a little girl, my father and my mother separated and then divorced, and when my father had visitation, he would always promise us a special treat. And he had saved his change and whatever, because we were not wealthy at all. We were poor. And inevitably, on the way to get the treat, there would be an unhoused person on the street, what in New York City we called a bum. And my father, the bum, would always say, can you spare some change? And my dad never gave them money. Instead, he invited them to come with us to get our treat, which meant my sister and I didn't get a treat because we fed the bum. And it was a very real education that my father gave me about having compassion for people who have less than we do. Regardless of whether we had very little and were saving for something special, we were still going to be able to have something special. And they weren't even going to be able to eat. So instead of having an ice cream cone, we bought that person a sandwich, or a cup of coffee and a donut, or something that would feed them and warm them. So this was my life lesson, right? It happened throughout my experience with my father. We lost him almost 20 years ago, and I have always fed people, always, throughout my entire life. It started with my dad teaching. When I became a resident of Greenfield, when I moved to Massachusetts, I decided to get involved here at my church, and they were part of the Franklin County Community Meal Program. As a matter of fact, a minister of this church started that program. The minister was no longer here, but the program, we were still participating in the program. And so I immediately started cooking for our community several times a year. And I cooked for my church family, and I cooked for youth retreats and conferences. I just was always cooking, and I loved cooking. It was another thing that my dad gave me. He loved to cook. He could recreate any flavor after he had eaten it. I have the same skill, and I'm 100% self-taught chef. I didn't go to culinary school or any of that stuff, although I do have all my certifications. You don't have to go to culinary school for that. So when Bernie Glassman, who founded the Café in Montague, approached All Souls Church and said, we'd like to have our meal here, I was 100% in. And as soon as the meal started here, I started volunteering. And in those days, they cooked the meal off-site, but very soon they were like, could we use the kitchen here and cook here? And then I started cooking for the organization. Before it was even called Stone Soup Café, it was called the Let All Eat Café. And there's something so sacred. So it's something so sacred about sitting down with people and eating with them. And so I would cook, and then I would come out and I would sit down with my neighbors, and we would share a meal. And I would get to know them, and I would ask them questions about their life and what they liked to eat, and I adapted. So I think there was a major shift, not just globally because of the pandemic, but there was a major shift in this organization when COVID hit. We all felt the pressure of crisis, and previous to COVID, we were serving 150 to 200 meals on a Saturday. Everybody sat around tables that had tablecloths, and it was a buffet line, and people could go back for seconds. And when the shelter-in-place orders came, we had to quickly move to a curbside pickup and delivery model. And that model exists to this day, because we now do between 550 and 600 meals every week, and there's no room in this facility. There's all kinds of different ways that connections are made when you're sitting around a table. So Stone Soup wants to have people sitting around tables again, and to that end we're looking for a new home, and we have lots of ideas about the way in which our organization could meet the needs of people who are living with food insecurity or who can't pay full price for a restaurant quality meal. And so we have some ideas, and I can't share them right now, but I can tell you that they involve other organizations getting together with us so that we have full food service 7 days a week. That is the ideation right now, and it is the dream, and it's been the dream for several years. The other thing that happened to us is we discovered mutual aid, and we realized that while we're a 501c3 and therefore a charity, we don't like the charity mindset. The charity mindset creates divisions within our society. And what we'd like for Greenfield is for Greenfield to embrace the mutual aid mindset, which basically says, take what you need and give what you can, which is why we have this pay what you can offering. So anybody can come and eat for free if that's what they need to do, because they take what they need. But if they have something that they can give back, whether it's volunteer hours or financial support or in-kind donations from their farm, their homestead garden or something, we're happy to share what they can, to partake in what they can share with us, because they're partaking in what we share with them. And I just said we and them, and the reality is that in a mutual aid society, there's no us and them, there's just us. We're all doing for each other, and we're doing for each other in a way that is responsive, nimble, and live in the moment. It is collaborative, and it's creative. It's generative rather than subtractive. And when you think of our organization, I don't want you to think of Soup Kitchen. I want you to think of Pay What You Can restaurant. It just happens to be open only on Saturdays for lunch. I also don't want people to think, oh, I'm not going to go there because I'm going to take food out of the mouth of someone else. No, we make plenty of food. And if you can pay for your whole meal, you actually are helping put food in somebody else's mouth by supporting the mission of the organization. And then for Greenfield, I think Greenfield is suffering some of the same things that other towns are having all over the country, which is there's a divisive rhetoric. It has to do with politics that really needs to. We need to find another way to talk with one another that doesn't have anything to do with if you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, a Green Party. None of that. You're a human. I'm a human. How do we relate to each other? And I think that ensuring that people can sit together starts to meet that need of changing rhetoric and rebuilding relationship, which is also something that happened during COVID. Relationship was interrupted even within families. Somebody lives 2 states over, and if you didn't have technology, you weren't really seeing them face to face. You might be on the phone with them, but even that for a lot of people became less and less frequent. And so as a society, we've become disconnected, and mutual aid says, let's reconnect. And what we're saying for our future is, let's have a place where we actually can connect. So yeah, that's kind of like where we're going and our dream for Greenfield. Greenfield is an amazing little city, has a great amount of resource and abundance that is often overlooked. And really what it is people power. You know, there's a lot of poverty here, but the reality is that there are people here who are willing to pitch in, who are willing to do for one another, who show up for one another in ways that, at least I can say from my organization standpoint, are amazing. Like the 15 people who show up every Saturday to drive meals to 120 households all over the county. Like the, 50 to 60 people that show up to chop, prep vegetables, cook with me, pack boxes, and get things out the door. The another 12 people that run our community food store, which is called Everybody's Community Store, and it's a free pantry basically. I mean, yes, we'll accept donations if you want, but we're making sure that some of the issues around accessibility are not in place for the food that we're offering at the community store, as well as the meal. Right? You can't pay for an entire restaurant quality meal. We're serving a 3-course meal to people, and they can't pay for it. It's okay, or they could pay some. It's okay. How we bravely step forward instead of shrinking back. How we reach out our hand to greet a new neighbor, regardless of what they look like or what their ability is, or what their language is. A smile is universal. So yeah, I think that Greenfield has some really powerful assets that could be utilized to make this a city to be replicated, right? A city full of citizens who are for one another. Well, I think the very first thing is that because our name is Stone Soup Café, they think we're a soup kitchen. And soup kitchen is a very derogatory term, and it's a very shameful term. It strips dignity from people, and that's not who we are. We're actually lifting people up and trying to really work with what people's needs are. And so we're listening all the time. So that's one thing. And I think another thing is that people think about what it was like what our program was like pre-COVID, and then they see other people lined up on the street and they think, oh, those poor people. But no, those people are showing up because they love being here. We have more than 75% of our people are their repeat customers, and some of them have been here since the beginning, and they come because they want to be in community, even if it's on the sidewalk. Another thing is people heard like we were looking for a new home, and they were like, well, I sure hope they won't have the lines out the door like they do over here. And I was like, we're looking for a bigger space so people can sit down with one another. It's just this common misunderstanding. And it's very natural for humans to be like us and them. And I can't say enough that it's just us. There's no us and them. Everybody puts their pants on the same way. Everybody has to have water. Everybody has to eat. Everybody needs some love in their life. Everybody needs enough sleep and shelter and clothing to protect them from the elements. These are all basic human needs and rights that if we actually looked at them, we wouldn't be othering people. We would be going, oh, look, another human. Oh, isn't that cool? So I do think there's this common misunderstanding. What is it like to make 600 servings of squash or corn or rice and have it all ready to go to be packed into boxes? A lot of people don't understand we're not opening cans. We're not pulling out frozen patties of some unknown origin with all kinds of preservatives in them. We're just not doing that. We're scratch cooking. I would say 98% of what we're doing is scratch cooking, and then 2% is like, yes, there's a can of tomato paste and there's diced tomatoes, and in the wintertime there's canned corn. But even our beans, we start from dry. So they don't understand when I say restaurant quality food, we're talking we have integrity to our food. And And there was recently there was some feedback around why are you gluten-free? And so we run a gluten-free establishment, and we're gluten-free because there are at least 20% of our population have a gluten intolerance or actual celiac disease. And if I brought gluten into this building, and when I say gluten, I mean the pulverized flour variety, not something pre-made, I would contaminate the food sources, and then those people wouldn't be able to access the meal. And it's one of the things that happens in our society is those who have the most need are usually the most overlooked, and they're not given the product that they need. And we're like, we need to make sure that everybody can access our food, so we're going to have integrity with our food. You know, I spoke earlier about resources. Greenfield has people and creativity, and we are a nimble organization. And yes, I do stress. I'm stressing about money at every level, not just organizationally, right? I'm stressing about my neighbors who are going to be, you know, pushed off of healthcare in the next 12 to 15 months. And they're already making impossible choices. What happens when they don't have health care coverage? I'm stressing out about the fact that that certain kinds of programming is being eliminated. So the heat assistance programs that are huge, especially here in the Northeast, they're being eliminated. They already have been impacted. And so, again, my neighbors are going to have to make impossible choices about, do they heat their house, or do they get their medicine, or do they get food? The cost of food is astronomical. Whole food is very costly, as is processed food. Like, even I don't buy them very often, but a bag of potato chips is like 5 times what it was not all that long ago. For the organization, because federal funding is basically cut off from everybody, that means that there's more competition at the local funding level across the board. It's not just government funding that's being impacted, it's all funding. It's foundational funding, grant funding, corporate sponsorship. People are going and asking more of the local funders because the federal government isn't funding us any longer. Department of Agriculture's regional offices were just closed, right? They were the major funding source hubs for all these local farmers. Franklin County is full of local farmers. Farmers who were promised grant funds that can't get the grant funds now because they've been cut off. How are these farmers actually going to create the crops that we depend on, continue to stay in business and do the work that they need to do without going bankrupt? And does it keep me up at night? No. You know why? Because I go out and I weed my garden, and I stick to what's right here in front of me. I meet the need of the humans that I share my community with, to the best of my ability. And when push comes to shove, that's where I'll be. I'll be right here doing the best I can and asking, people to come along with me and help. I know my garden gives me a lot of joy, and I've spent almost 20 years working on that garden to make it better and better, and it gives me a lot of joy when I have enough time to go out and just play in the earth. And there are ways that people can do that even if they aren't so privileged as to have their own garden. I find time to just veg out with my husband, or take a drive, or a walk. I remind myself about historical context, and I just think I try to stay in the present. I put things in historical context. I celebrate people for their wins. I celebrate us as an organization for our wins. I work with my team to make sure that we're staying focused, and that the message that we put out to our community is clear and consistent and loving and compassionate. And I think that also it helps to ground me, that we need to be loving and compassionate. We need not to be overwhelmed by everybody's need, but to be in the present moment, to do what you can, and then to be like, I did what I could, and today, that was today, and tomorrow's another day, and I'll do what I can then. And so sometimes you need to be one day at a time, or 1 week at a time, or 1 month at a time, or for this organization, 1 meal at a time, 1 event at a time, 1 celebration at a time. With all that I've shared with you, I just want everybody to know that we welcome volunteers every Friday and Saturday at Stone Soup Café. If you are moved to help pay for people's meals, you can go to our website, www.thestonesoupcafe.org, and there's a donate button there. You can also find out about all of our happenings. You can sign up to volunteer there. You can see our training videos for what happens when you volunteer, or how to stay safe, or knife care, any of those things. You can read our newest newsletter, see what I've been sharing with our community in terms of news and information. And you get to see great pictures. You can go into the calendar feature and see every single week is a different theme from somewhere in the world. So this week we celebrate Nelson Mandela. Last week it was French Bastille Day. The week before, American Independence Day. And we will continue to celebrate every single week, because when we come together and eat, whether it's we're picking up at curbside and going under our hospitality tent to share a meal together, or we're delivering food to you in your home and you're sharing your food with your neighbor, your friends, your family, it's a blessing to be able to break bread with one another. Stone Soup Cafe's mission is to create community space where all are welcome to share nourishment, connection, and learning for body, mind, and spirit. So wherever Stone Soup is, whether it's right here on the corner of Hope and Main, or if it's out on the town square and common at Harvest Supper, or we're out at an event like Pride or Juneteenth, we're bringing our community with us, and we're all part of each other. So remember, there's no us and them, there's only us, and you're welcome to join and be a part of us anytime you like.